It's the late 90s and Sega's Saturn's getting thumped by the PlayStation. So bad, most people didn't even know the Saturn existed. So with one final shot, Sega bet everything on this. Launched in the US on way too many nines, what you're seeing here is basically a shrunken down arcade machine that plugs straight into your TV. First seeing this thing at my local warehouse store in 2002 was a sad sight. Like the Walkmans, Furbies, and other relics from the 90s, the Dreamcasts have been tossed into the clearance bin, coated in price stickers, just begging someone to take them away. And seeing nothing special, 10-year-old me put it back in that bin without looking back. Until now. Imagine your average PS2 game, but double the picture quality. That's how this baby shows most games with VGA cables, while actually sharing its sound system and computer chip with the Sega Naomi. You probably played on a Naomi at your local arcade back in the day, or maybe even now while waiting for fish and chips. Now Dreamcast wasn't quite as powerful as her arcade sister, but she wouldn't need all your coins, and if you got behind her, there was actually a different slot where you could stick your long, dangly... Hey, switch the camera, I want to show them. Sega's online subscription service is like the caveman ancestor to online gaming today. There were lobbies, but you had to manually find them, and instead of one worldwide server, each region had a separate one. Thank God we no longer live with that inconvenience. Though Sonic Team's Phantasy Star Online let you play with people as far as Japan, and even chat with them in the lobby with a translator. Games I play today don't even allow that. I'm really hyping up a game I've never played. See, unless you've got a brand new copy with a passcode or can get onto fan-made servers, this happens. Sorry, that was when I played Rares. Some people say it intended to simulate the player being on LSD. Now that is just nonsense. A closer look and we have a spring-loaded disc tray for both CDs and of course games, which are stored on what's called a GD-ROM, basically a CD disc with more storage. To the left, dial-up modem, and on the right, a serial port. Sega were way ahead of the game with this. I recommend using Special K, but any cornflakes should do in order to get that enhanced definition we're after. Around the front we've got 4 controller ports for these big boys. Yeah, I hear you, but being practical doesn't equal character. These are actually the last controllers to feature jump packs, which go into the lower hole and vibrate when there's action.
That's what she said.
Shut up. And in the top hole goes this awesome doodad called the Visual Memory Unit, or VMU. It's a memory card, but you can also play minigames on it with certain titles, hide sneak plays from your opponent when playing NFL, and... Get up. Resident Evil's just a game. The VMU tells you what Claire's heart was doing, not yours.
Really? Oh, great. Now, where was I? Oh, right. Games like Sonic Adventure and Sega GT even let you store downloadable content on the VMU. Like it or not, modern gamers, this is where it all began.
Speaking of innovation, let's talk Shenmue, and why you should play the Xbox version of Shenmue 2.
I know it. It's a foreign country, right?
Yeah, don't do that. So the guy who created Virtua Fighter goes to China to inspire environments for its sequel, but he gets so hooked on the place that he decides to make the most expensive game ever made. I never cared much for the story of avenging Ryu's father's death, but pacing the streets of 1986 Yokosuka, Japan, that first game's budget hits. Everything feels real, lived in.
On that day, the snow changed to rain. I heard you were splashed with... I'd better not.
What was Yokosuka's weather on December 1st, 1986? We'll find out and put it in the game. I want realism, and get me 100 different NPCs on the double. They need to look rough and gruff like real people, and don't you dare let any of them have the same routine 2 days in a row.
Oh,
beautiful. Remember when consoles bragged about how many bits they had? Well, this is thanks to 128 bits. So who is Lara Croft and her polygon? Now, I was just trying to explain that the Dreamcast computer chip was made by Hitachi, who among other things also made the Hitachi Magic Wand, which ladies would use to... Apparently I'm not allowed to talk about hardware. The point I want to make is Dreamcast technology presents not only 6th, but also 5th gen games beautifully. See, a bunch were ported from the PS1 and Nintendo 64, and most of them look way better on the Dreamcast. Tony Hawk and Pro Skater 2 is now a total Chad with visible triceps, and Black Cat from Spider-Man no longer looks like she's made of Lego blocks. I think this is partially why some people class the Dreamcast as a 5th gen console. Could we settle and just call it Generation 5.5?
No, identify as both.
Come 2000, Sega restructures their in-house game development teams into 9 separate studios. They basically say to each top designer, okay, you're now fully in charge of your team. Give yourselves a name, you got free reign to experiment like crazy as long as you make us some good games. And so we got Hitmaker with Crazy Taxi, House of the Dead 2 from WoW, Smilebits made the stunning cel-shaded Jet Set Radio.
And from Sonic Team, let's see, this is from 2 gens ago, we've already talked about that. Oh! Choo Choo Rocket! Hands down the best puzzle game I've ever played.
Now all that in-house stuff is solid, but what about third-party games? Well, support for the Dreamcast wasn't huge, but what it did get absolutely kicked some tail. Like Soul Calibur, Power Stone 2, Metropolis Street Racer, I'm not laughing at what you think I'm laughing at.
Quake 3 Arena, RE Code Veronica, and one of my favourites, Dead or Alive 2.
A fighter that really mixes things up with its arenas. For instance, you might get kicked through a church tower window, then suddenly you're fighting on the ground below, or off stage into the auditorium, down some stairs, off a waterfall, whatever. It's an interesting dynamic to break the repetitiveness that a lot of fighting games can sometimes have. There's a 2v2 tag team mode, which I don't have enough keen friends for, sob, but even 1v1's decent. Kasumi's an absolute babe, and all this borderline nudity, it's part of the story. My younger brother agrees. When I showed him Soul Calibur the other day, he said, "Where's all the exaggerated parts of the story?" A weapon fighter, for anyone who doesn't know, if I described Soul Calibur with one word, it'd be fluid. And not the kind of fluid you'll get from Dead or Alive. See, movement-wise, the Tekken's and Mortal Kombats of the time gave you limited sidestepping at best, but here you think and move in 3D. It's a rare instance where a console port actually blew the arcade version out of the water, and it absolutely pops at 60 frames per second with the use of VGA cables. Now I know that's 2 in a row, but come on, aren't fighters what you think of when I say the word arcade?
No, I think of these damn racing games.
Now you don't need me to tell you the Dreamcast failed. Gamers or not, I'm sure most people you knew in the early 2000s probably had one of these things. Stop it. See, arcade gaming had started to decline in the mid-90s. People wanted gritty, serious games like Resident Evil and Metal Gear Solid. You know, stuff made popular by Sony's PlayStation. Dreamcast had a bit of that, but I'm more focused on the arcade stuff, while the online play wasn't helped since like only 4% of people worldwide had internet at the time.
Oh, you poor thing. You're like an old man who hit puberty early.
Even a few months after a decent US launch, that last-gen PlayStation still held 60% of the console market, as most people were holding out for the, "Alright, you can come out now, just don't get too excited." The thing with the PS2 is it's more its reputation that hurt the Dreamcast. Once it released, reports came out that it wasn't as powerful as Sony claimed, and actually kind of tricky to develop for.
Fake news.
But let's pretend we're an average consumer in 1999.
$199? The PS2's meant to be out in a few months, and that thing's going to play all my PS1 games and DVDs. Well, this has got 128 bits. But the PS2 used millions of polygons to make up Lara Croft's shoes. Sorry, Sega.
Before we start a Sony lynch mob, just know even before the PS2, Sega put a lot of people off the Dreamcast. I mean, some game devs wouldn't touch it since the Saturn had been such a nightmare to develop for. EA Sports had a tanty and ran when told they couldn't be the only sport game publisher for it. And even the British.
Hello, yes, is this the Independent Television Commission? I'd like to lay a complaint. Sega have been advertising online gaming and then decide to launch the Dreamcast without one single bloody online game. It's a disgrace.
This Dreamcast is a piece of shit. I want to exchange for PlayStation hardware.
Yeah, things weren't great in Japan. The Sega president started throwing millions of dollars of his own money at the Dreamcast to try keep it afloat, even returning his nearly $700 million worth of stock just so Sega wouldn't go under. Only to pass away on March 16th, 2001, just 2 weeks before the Dreamcast discontinued on the 31st.
I think this calls for a toast to the Dreamcast and to Mr. Isao Okawa for providing a generation with sleepless nights and raw entertainment. This guy, though.
Ditching Sega for Microsoft and taking Shenmue 2 with him so that it never got released on the US Dreamcast, as well as being bald, are pretty heinous crimes which should have put Peter Moore in prison. Hey, maybe that's where he got the Halo tattoo. I bet he dropped the soap.
It was actually Moore who told Japan they should pull the plug on the Dreamcast, when of which the execs said nothing and just
walked out of the room, which in Japan is like telling someone to go fuck themselves. I mean, no one likes Moore, but he was right and the call was made. With the last one to roll off the assembly line being signed by each in-house game studio head. Now if you're watching and you won that in the GamePro comp, I will find you. And I will collect it from you if you'd be so kind as to donate it to me. Please. Nah, it's okay. I got my baby here, who, if we're talking from the Japan launch in '98, recently turned 25. Which I think is cue to ask the question, is it worth buying and collecting for in 2024?
Is that even a fucking question?
No, it isn't.
With the systems themselves, we're talking dearer than a PS2 or Xbox, but cheaper than a GameCube. Unless you want a black sports edition one, but honestly, does anyone? Probably.
Games aren't too bad, but there's the odd title here and there you might have to sell a kidney for. Though it depends on who you're buying from. In the Australian region, people want gold for anything Dreamcast related, since just before the launch, half the stock was impounded at the border for not being labelled properly.
I can't make this scene work without being copyrighted for the Indiana Jones score. Anyway, you've made it 12 minutes into this video. For that, I applaud your common sense and good taste. Some people say the algae still promotes copyrighted videos, just no monetizing. But 2 upload attempts told me otherwise. Either that or my content just sucks ass. Either way, let's get back to it.
Reliability's pretty good, aside from the laser reader potentially wearing out, though you can replace the disk drive with what's called a GDEMU, or your girlfriend didn't even mention you. Okay, that was dry. It's basically a permanent way to run all your games off of an SD card, so 1, there's no laser to fuck out, and 2, you preserve all your physical games, while not having the Dreamcast play any burned copies. I mean, the Dreamcast can't do that, and even if it could, we wouldn't want to do anything illegal. Oh, also, make sure you don't get one that looks like it's been through the Sahara Desert. Having to soak mine in hydrogen peroxide was a nightmare.
Woo! Strip party, yeah! Yeah. Yeah, baby, that's it. Get with.
So, Sega quits making hardware and goes on as a third-party game publisher, striking an 11-game deal with Microsoft. That's why you see things like Crazy Taxi 3, Jet Set Radio Future, and House of the Dead 3 on the original Xbox. Microsoft did develop the Windows CE operating system for the Dreamcast, and so perhaps they thought, let's have Sega's spirit live on through our system. Or is Bill Gates just an emotionless businessman who learned the industry, watched the Dreamcast burn, then ensured his system would fill that gap in the market? I'll let you decide. But the answer is yes.
But either way, thanks Microsoft. You sparked my interest in the Dreamcast and allowed me to enter another world. A world shaped by a true game company who just made all things games. As much as I like Microsoft and Sony, they're both technology giants who basically saw an opportunity to cash in and create their own gaming sectors in order to make products they could sell to everyone. Sega, on the other hand, made things for you. Not your auntie, not your brother-in-law's cousin, you, the gamer. It's a company who let fans name their system in a competition and had a CEO who possibly died broke just to stop it collapsing. I mean, sure they're a corporation, but I don't know. Reading this stuff makes me feel they're a company who genuinely cared about their customers. And as great as it is that they're still in the industry making third-party games, I think it's fair to say that Sega games are best when they're made for Sega systems. And so, whatever your thoughts on Nintendo are, they're the last true game company left. We can mourn the loss of the futuristic Eurobeaty world of 90s arcade culture that died with the Dreamcast. But at the end of the day, I don't see Xbox, PS2 or GameCube games still being made. Who gets the last laugh? Anyway, that's all folks. I sincerely apologise for the huge gap between the Xbox video and this one, but, like most of you, I'm on the 9 to 5 grind, so it can get hard to make time for things like this, but I'm trying to do better. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.